everybody. How you doing today? I'm Karen Hartglass, and you're listening to... What are we listening to? Let me hear it. It's all about food. That's right. It's all about food. Hooray. It's all about food. And can I tell you a secret? I'm hungry. And this hasn't happened to me in a long time before doing this program. I usually take precaution and get fed before I talk about food. It's always dangerous talking about food when it's time to eat, just like it's dangerous to go shopping for food when you're hungry, right? They always recommend don't go food shopping when you're hungry. You'll buy all the wrong things. Anyway, I'll get over it and I'll be fine. I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, so we're going to talk about food today, and we're going to tell some stories. And I think stories and food go together very well. Humans are storytellers, and humans love eating, right? So eating and telling stories go together very well, and we're going to be doing that with Geshen Claire Greenwood, who is the author of a new cookbook and storybook called Just Enough: Vegan Recipes and Stories from Japan's Buddhist Temples. Geshen Claire Greenwood is the author of Just Enough, which we're going to talk about today, and Bow First, Ask Questions Later. She also writes the very popular Buddhist blog, That's So Zen. And she was ordained by, if I say it right, Saido Suzuki Roshi in 2010, and in 2015 received Dharma Transition, which means the authorization to teach. She returned to the U.S. in 2016 to complete her master's degree in East Asian Studies, a popular meditation teacher. She lives in San Francisco, Bay Area, California, and you can find out more at geshen.net. Welcome to It's All About Food.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed reading your book and reading the stories. Yeah, it was really fun. Talking and saying that I'm hungry today, I have to admit that while I read your book, all I wanted was Japanese food.
Good. That's the point of it.
And I was drinking a lot of green tea. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, but one of my favorites is Genmai cha.
Yes.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Genmai cha. Yeah, very good with the little roasted pieces of brown rice. And my repertoire of air quotes, Japanese food consists of avocado maki, which I guess really isn't traditional with the avocado. And,
right.
And we do a lot with miso.
Yeah.
But I have never really taken the plunge, and I'm a little more motivated now with traditional Japanese cooking and Zen cooking. There are some ingredients that I've occasionally purchased but never stock, like the mirin and burdock root and some of the other magical ingredients that are important in this cuisine.
Yeah, I think a lot of American, a lot of the audience here kind of is approaching this book with this from the same place that you are, and I hope that I demystify things a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
About,
so before we plunge into your book, I wanted to say that I have held on to a book from 1997 that a friend gave to me that I worked with at the time. He knew I was vegan, and he was really into Japanese food. And it's called Healthy Japanese Cooking. I don't know if you're familiar with it. But no. It seemed to me, it's a very simple book and it's very lovely. But I could never take that step and make any of the recipes. It just seemed so, what do I want to say? There was a spiritual, very respectful attitude I had about it, and I just liked looking at it and touching it, and it's like, I'm not ready for this book yet.
Yeah.
But now I'm ready, and your book has definitely helped with that, to kind of make it more doable, approachable.
Good. I mean, it is a cookbook, so I wanted. I want people to cook the food.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so if I have lots of questions. So my first question is, so who enters monastic life? First learn how to say it, Karen. Who are the people that do that in the Zen Buddhist monastery?
In Japan?
Yeah, or Americans that decide to do that too, like yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a very different population in Japan versus in the United States. So in Japan, mostly who become monks and nuns are the children of monks. In Japan, it's a non-celibate tradition, so monks or priests will live in family temples, and so they need somebody to take over the family business, basically. And so the son usually, but sometimes the daughter, will train to be a priest and take over. But there's also, especially women, and sometimes for men, especially older women will kind of, after their children have grown up, kind of decide that, this is something they wanted to pursue for a lot of their life, and now they have time, which is kind of like historically how it's been with nuns too. Older women who want to do more spiritual practice. And then in America, yeah, I don't know. I think very few people enter monastic life, actually.
Yes, and how is it that you got that idea, and when and did it?
It's funny. People often ask me that, like, how did I decide to join the monastery? And the answer is I didn't decide to join. I just went there.
Okay.
I just went, and then I kept living there. So, yeah, I mean, Buddhism was something that I was incredibly passionate about for many, many years. And after I graduated from college, I remember, I was trying to write a novel, and that's what it was. I was trying to write a novel, and I couldn't figure out how to have the protagonist have any kind of, character arc or, character progression. Because I just didn't know what that would be to, grow as a person. So I realized I had to figure out my own life first before I could write about anything. So that was one of the many, many motivations I had.
All right. Now, is it true that when you enter a life like this, you give up your worldly possessions?
Well, again, it depends on what you mean by enter. I just went as a layperson, and I stayed and worked there. And in America, too, there's opportunities for people to stay at a monastery and usually do some kind of work exchange, and it's for as ever long as you want. So, no, you don't.
Okay.
And yeah.
Because I was just wondering how difficult it is to leave if you decide you don't want to make it your life.
How difficult is it to leave?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it depends on how long you've been staying. So for somebody who's in their early 20s and it's kind of I want to live in a monastery, and they go for 3 months, it's fairly easy to go back. But if you've been doing it for, 20 years and have no job experience and no funds, then it's hard.
That could be really hard.
So that's a big difference.
Yeah, that's a big difference, yes.
Between Japan and the United States is in Japan, as I was saying, people come from these family systems that are supporting their religious training, and so there's always going to be a social network for them to fall back on. Whereas in the West, Buddhism is new. We don't have that same structure set up, so it's a lot harder in certain ways.
We don't have good social networks here, period.
Period, yes, that's very...
It's not very American. It's just everybody fend for yourself.
Yeah.
Good luck.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So I enjoyed reading about the routines, and the methods, the patterns you have to follow specific. They're not just recipes, but when you're making food, for example, there's a very detailed method, a ritual, and so the title of your book is Just Enough, and that has such great meaning, not just for flavor and food, but for life and balance. And you talk about balance. There's like a tug, I think, between balance and control. And you mentioned when you were in Japan and you learned how to make rice. Rice was made a certain way. And then you ended up in California in another monastery. Is that what you call them?
Yeah.
And and making rice was made very differently.
Yeah.
And you didn't feel really empowered enough to speak about that because that's not how it was done.
Well, it wasn't that I didn't feel empowered. It was that my training as a nun in Japan taught me, or was all about being in the place where you are and following the system of the monastery where you are. So, like, monasteries have all these different, like you were just describing, different, how do you describe? Not rules. Somewhere between a ritual and a rule. Like, the way things are done, right? And they're really, really important in monastic training in Japan, that you follow them. But they're different in every single place. So you have to learn to adapt and, it's like, there's this phrase that my teacher would always repeat to me, like, it translates to, it depends on the situation. So you have to be able to be in the place where you are. So when I was back in California and everything was done differently, I was just like, wow, okay. Like, I just spent 5 years learning to make rice the Japanese way. And it would be super disrespectful and, like, not useful if I was like, oh, you're doing it wrong. Because they do it this way in Japan. Like, I was there to help and I was there to serve. So I had to learn a new way. And I think that's a lot of what Zen practice is just being flexible and having beginner's mind.
Be like water, go with the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, how does one make rice in Japan, and how does one make rice in America, or at least in California?
Well, the anecdote you're talking about is specifically about rice porridge. I think the actual rice, there's a truck driving by, the actual rice is made the same, like the sticky rice, but porridge, how are they doing it? In Japan, you would never stir the rice as it is boiling or simmering. You would just leave it, because if you stir it, it gets kind of gelatinous. And they didn't like that, at least where I was. Again, it's the same thing. It's like, at least not one specific spot where I was. They would never stir it. But at Green Gulch, where I was in Northern California, where I was doing porridge, they wanted me to vigorously stir the pot as it was cooking. And I was just like, it's just blasphemous to me. I couldn't fathom that that's what they were doing. But in hindsight, it's funny, that, like, I was so immersed in this, like, Japanese way of being that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're stirring the rice.
Well, I've never made porridge, but when I make rice, I never stir it. I just add the water with the rice, and it's like blasphemous. When I was reading stirring the rice, I mean, the only time I've stirred rice really is if I'm making like a risotto, an Italian rice.
Well, yeah, I did. That was for rice porridge, which is more watery.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of ways to cook rice.
Indeed.
And there's lots of different varieties of rice.
Yes.
Yeah. So another thing that I like, this was towards the end of the book, and then I'm going to get into food at some point soon. I saved the best for last. You learn not to look into people's bowls.
Yeah.
It was a great story about that. Can you just talk about the meaning behind not looking into people's bowls?
Well, it came up very literally for me. And there's actually, like, a line in one of the, like, an ancient Zen text where it's like instructions for how to eat and like how to go about monastic life, where it says to not look at other people's bowls or other people's food while you're eating. But yeah, one time when it was pretty early on in my time in Japan. I was still a layperson, and I was eating, and like you would eat at this long table, and I can't remember why, but I was, checking everybody else's food out, because you're served, like, eating is very elaborate there, the ritual. You can't serve yourself. You have to, wait for, there's an announcement for seconds, or when seconds will be served. You have to wait for that. So if you want a lot of food, you have to eat really quickly. If you don't, anyway, whole thing. And sometimes there's not enough food. So I was just looking at what the people sitting next to me were eating, and the abbot was at the head of the table, saw me, and was like, Geshin Dogen said, "Don't look in other people's bowls," which was very literal then, but it also applies to just a way of being in the world, of not comparing yourself to others, because I know, at least personally, like, the best way to feel bad about myself is to compare myself to other people. And it's so easy, especially with social media, to go on and be like, oh, that person, life looks so great. Like, oh, they're married. Oh, their kid. Oh, their job looks so great. They must be super happy.
The grass is always greener.
What?
The grass is always greener.
Yeah, and also you don't know what other people's lives are actually like. But then, your life is the only one you get to live. So you might, it's like, what did Dolly Parton say? Find out who you are and do it on purpose. Like, you gotta do your own path.
Yeah, I think it was my favorite story, or the favorite lesson, because it really relates to so many different things, and you could extend it. Certainly not comparing yourself to anyone else, and everyone always does it, and it's just a recipe for disaster.
It really is, and like, I wrote that book at a time when I had left the monastery, and I was like reintegrating to like contemporary American capitalism. And I, had no money. I had no job skills. I was trying to get a career started. And I just felt terrible about myself because I didn't have these things that other people had. And I felt like I should have. So I felt, deficit in some way. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And
everyone struggles with that. I live in New York, and I live in the borough of Queens, and it's a nice neighborhood where I live, Forest Hills. But Forest Hills is right next to one of the most beautiful places anywhere, called Forest Hills Gardens, and the homes there are just amazing. And my partner Gary and I frequently walk through Forest Hills Gardens. And just a few days ago, I was in a very terribly bad mood, which doesn't happen to me very often, so I'm grateful for that. But I was looking for a way to move past it, and we went for a walk, and I was hoping that our hour and a half long walk that we typically do would do it. And as we walked through the most beautiful homes I've ever seen in the world, I looked at each one of them and I said, I bet everyone that lives in these beautiful homes has big problems.
Good. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you didn't go the other direction.
Yeah.
Of us thinking that everybody would be happy. Because especially in capitalism, we have this myth that, like, people with money are better people morally, that somehow they're good people because they've earned money, but then also that they are happier, which is not true. Both of those aren't true.
Yes, and the last thing I want to say on this subject, while we're not looking into people's bowls, I recommend don't looking at everyone's plates. I know different cultures operate differently, but it's best if we don't comment on what other people are eating, whether they're eating fast enough or slow enough, or are you going to eat that, or whatever.
Yeah, I like that. I think also, like,
just mind your own business.
Yeah.
Because people have shared with me how offended they can be when, and I never knew that.
Yeah, it makes me think of also, like, I just think it's a good practice to not comment on people's bodies at all.
Yes, food, bodies.
Like, even if it's that they're beautiful or something. 'Cause you never know what they're going through or how they...
That's right. We're learning. It's an awkward stage we're going through right now in the global culture, but I think we're going to settle in a good place because everybody's walking on eggshells right now. Oh, I can't say this and I can't do that, but and there are ways you might compliment that can be taken offensively. We have to really be mindful.
Mindfulness, huh?
Yes. All right. Let's. I got a bunch of things.
Talk about food?
Almost. Yeah, we can talk about food. So the recipes are vegan. And I want to know where you are on the food continuum. You shared a lot of stories where you were eating as an omnivore. Mm-hmm. I just wondered where the vegan recipes fit into your lifestyle.
Yeah, I'm not vegan. And actually, to be honest, I mean, vegan is what those recipes are. Mm-hmm. But it's not an accurate translation of what I'm describing, which is sojin yori, which is the temple food. Sojin means like discipline, and yori means food, discipline food. But yeah, in Buddhist temples, there's traditionally been no meat. And I don't know why there's no dairy. I think there's just no dairy because there aren't a lot of cows.
Not traditionally.
Historically, there hasn't really been milk or cheese, right?
Right.
So it's just developed, that style of food is developed to be like, how can we, in the most creative way and the most delicious way, make plants taste good. Mm-hmm. And so I really was very passionate about that and transmitting that and teaching that. But you're right, as I talk about in that book, there were times when the one exception to that rule of no meat and dairy is that if people donate things, we don't ever say no to donations because, historically Buddhist monks and nuns have begged for food from the time of the Buddha, and still in some parts of the world do go on begging rounds. So you can't say, like, well, beggars can't be choosers, I guess, literally. So we never turned away meat. So sometimes there would be meat. And then now in my life, I definitely don't eat a lot. I don't eat a lot of meat.
Okay. I'm just remembering I spoke earlier in the year with Will Tuttle. I don't know if you know Dr. Will Tuttle, and he was the editor of a book called Buddhism and Veganism, and there were different essays from a variety of people talking about Buddhism and how that connects with veganism. So different Buddhists had different interpretations of whether you should be or not be. It was really fascinating.
Yeah. But I mean, especially in the last week, I've been with Amazon. I've been thinking a lot about.
Oh, there's that. Yes. Does humanity want to survive? Do we even deserve to survive? I don't even know. But if we want to,
better question, yeah.
We all have to jump in and do our part. And that means animal agriculture is the worst thing on the planet, and especially agribusiness, and it's devastating for global warming.
Yeah. So, no beef, I think.
Yeah, and beef is pretty much the worst. Okay, so let's talk about some food here. I wanted to... I'm looking at all my notes here. Too many notes. Okay. I have a question about soybeans. So you have...
Soybeans?
Yes, you have one recipe with soybeans, and that's going to be the first recipe that I make.
The stewed soybeans?
Let's see. Yeah, I think so. It's the 5-ingredient soybeans. Is there another one?
Yeah. No.
No, that's the only one I found. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So a couple of months ago, I bought a ton of dried soybeans. I make a lot of bean dishes, and I bought the soybeans thinking I was going to make soy milk. I don't know if you have any experience with soy milk, and if you do, please share. But before we get there, I've had some disastrous experiences making soy milk. And so now I have a lot of soybeans that I figure I'm just going to like cook them and eat them. And this is going to be the recipe I'm going to make. 5 ingredient soybeans.
Great.
Gomoku mame?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the disaster that happened?
Well, have you made soy milk?
I have not made soy milk.
Okay. Well, there's lots of recipes online. They're all very similar. And I also have this wonderful, the Book of Tofu, which is a great resource for tofu and soybeans and all kinds of things. It's an ancient cookbook. It might be 30 years old. I don't know. And they basically, you soak the beans like you do traditionally, and then you can try and remove the outer skins a little bit, and then you cook them until you're soft. And there's this big foam that grows, and it's different than the foam that you get when you're cooking other beans. And then you're supposed to, you could blend it and then cook it some more, and then basically that's soy milk. But the thing is, it smells like paint.
Huh.
And the taste is very strong. It's a lot stronger than West Soy and Trader Joe's varieties that I buy. I buy unsweetened organic soybeans and water, and I'm wondering about that flavor. Is that a flavor I'm supposed to like?
I don't know.
I don't
Sounds
know.
to me like you need to find a soy milk guru.
Yeah, I need to find a soy milk guru. Yep.
A lot of these recipes, especially, there are a lot I didn't include in my book because, like, they're just so hard to. You have to watch somebody make it. You know, like, yeah.
So let's talk about bamboo and making it and eating it.
Yeah.
It sounds hard.
Yeah, it is hard. So, yeah, I describe the process in my book, starting from the, like, husk. I can't remember the actual, I want to call it a tusk, even though but it kind of looks like an elephant tusk of bamboo, and how you peel it, and you have to boil it and treat it in rice bran to get the bitterness out, and then boil it again, and then you can finally add the flavor. Most people don't do that in Japan, like at home. You can buy, and even in the U.S., if you go to a Japanese or Asian market, you can, especially in the spring, you can find pre-treated bamboo. So, yeah, I think the only reason we were doing that, again, that's right, it was donated. One year we were given like 6 tons of, I don't know how much we were given. It was so much bamboo, and it was literally overflowing in the basement, and we could not cook it fast enough. And also, as I write about, like, bamboo is slightly, it's
kind of toxic
a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you have a lot of it, it can be bad for you. So we were all just like breaking out in hives, and I had to figure out. That's when I was in charge of the kitchen too. I had eventually. And you're not allowed to waste. That's the other thing. So excess of bamboo, it makes people break out in hives, but you're not allowed to waste any food. So what we came up with is like grinding it and turning them into dumplings and then freezing the dumplings.
Okay.
To break out later.
Literally. break out later. Yeah, I was like wondering what ritual or what rule supersedes another. Not wasting or not poisoning yourself.
I think, that's like I learned a lot from the senior nuns. Helped me a lot when I was running the kitchen because, I was a young American who didn't really know a lot about Japanese food. But so, tricks like that, you sort of learn ways to bypass the rules and make everybody happy. I think not poisoning people comes first, to be honest.
Okay, so you mentioned dumplings. And you who doesn't love dumplings? I mean, dumplings are just a wonderful.
I had dumplings for lunch.
You did. Did you make them?
No, I live in San Francisco, and I went to dim sum.
You went to dim sum. Well, speaking of, I was thinking of Chaya. Have you been to Chaya since you're in that area?
Have I been to where?
Chaya. I guess
what
not.
What is that?
So it's a Japanese restaurant, and it's in San
I know
Francisco
what you're
and in
talking about.
Berkeley. And I think it's
Yeah.
run by Japanese nuns.
Really?
I don't know if they're nuns, but
vegetarian place. Yeah.
I got the impression they were nun-like.
Maybe none like.
But really good food.
Oh yeah, no, it's on my list.
Oh, amazing! And I feel the grace and the spiritualness in their food. It's just I can't say enough good about it. Love it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So dumplings? What?
About the dumplings. So you have a recipe for dumplings, and it comes when you talked about the Oban Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm familiar with the Oban Festival in San Jose, California. Don't know if you've ever been there, but it happened a few months ago. I guess when does it happen? In July or?
Yeah, like July and August.
And the thing that amazed me about it is they do a lot of traditional dances, and people will practice for months getting ready for these Oban dances, and they had like 1,000 people in a circle doing these dances. And I loved that feeling of community. These weren't all Japanese people. These were just the residents of San Jose. That was beautiful.
Yeah. Oban's fun.
And then you attached a dumpling recipe talking about the Oban.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking about in Japan they'll make altars for Obon, and they do little like vegetable, like eggplant and cucumber with little toothpicks in them to look like animals, so that the spirits of the dead can travel to the underworld on the little eggplant horses. And the abbess of the monastery, where I was telling the story once about somebody had a crooked eggplant, and it actually made a very good horse. It looked more like a horse than if it were straight. That's what she was saying. It's good to be a little crooked sometimes.
That's my horse laugh. Okay. I want to talk about freeze-dried tofu. Now, do you normally buy it like that, where it's dry and freeze-dried, or do you make it?
I'd buy it, yes. So it comes, it's little, they look like sponges. They expand in water. And they're super delicious and cheap and a good source of protein. I'm a huge fan. Koya tofu. Yeah, I've never made it. I don't think it's something that is easily made.
Well, I don't know, because I haven't used the dry kind, and I don't do it very often. But if I have tofu in the house and I'm going to travel, I just throw it in the freezer, because I have my own rules about not wasting food. I have this modified Buddhist practice, and so then I'll defrost it and I'll squeeze all the water out of it, and it's very sinewy and sponge-like, and then it soaks up everything else.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because according to legend, the origin of Koya tofu was exactly that. It was a monk who had left tofu out in the snow overnight, and it had frozen, and since there's this, you're not supposed to waste, they ate it anyway.
And they found out that it was wonderful.
Yeah, I found out that it was wonderful. But what's funny about that, so I read that story very early on in my stay in Japan, and I tried to do that. I froze tofu, but people got very mad at me because that's not what Koya tofu actually is. So, yeah, there's sometimes, people get attached to being tradition and things being traditional on.
Well, anyway, freeze-dried tofu, whether you buy it all dry and let it soak up whatever you want to, or if you do it the way I do, leave it out in the snow and let it freeze. It's great, and it has that chickeny-like texture.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah,
it's a little chewy, and yeah. You know that it's interesting. I'm thinking about innovation and like how this book is very. I wanted to transmit the tradition, and so I didn't reinvent the wheel a whole lot, which is sort of what I feel like being a chef in America or being a cookbook author is a lot. Is like your own take or your own recipe, and I write a little bit about that, but I felt like at that point, like there is a place and time for passing on tradition and learning, especially something as beautiful as temple food. But if I were to do a new book, I would want it to be more like being in America and what am I actually cooking? What am I taking to work? Like, what is realistic?
Okay, well, I mean, it's a good idea for a next cookbook, but don't judge yourself. This is a good thing that you did. It's kind of like what Julia Child did with French food. She brought traditional French food to the United States. Yeah.
Thank you. That's nice.
Okay, I just have a few more things, but one, I just need an MSG moment. Because
what?
you talk MSG, you talk about monosodium glutamate in the book, a couple of pages, and I just have to share my own thing. I am one of those people who gets the Chinese food syndrome, the headache in the temples. And it's on my list to research this because I know the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, that I don't trust anyway because they are severely underfunded and they're very influenced by lobbyists. They do some good work, but they could do a lot better. They have said that MSG is safe. And I know that MSG is found in lots of different foods for flavor. But I have to say that when I was a child and I had Chinese food, certain kinds, I would get this pressure headache in my temples. And my mom always said, oh, that's MSG. And she would still bring me to the same restaurants and I would still order the same food and get the same headaches. Nobody seemed to care about that. And then MSG in Chinese restaurants kind of fell out because people were concerned about it. And I never experienced those headaches until last year. And I went to 2 vegan places within a few months in the Bay Area because we travel there a lot. And one was a favorite little vegan hole in the wall in San Jose that I love. And we used to get these big noodle soups. And I got the headache. And I wrote to them later and said, is there MSG in your food? And they say, oh, no, there isn't because whatever. But we haven't been back because I don't know why I got the headache. And then there was another restaurant we went to, and I got the lunch, and the lunch deal came with a soup. And the soup, I got a miso soup, and I got the headache. And my partner, Gary, who's never experienced, he got the headache too, the pressure headache on the temples. And the server said, yeah, I get that too. It's in the soup. It's not in anything else, and it's the MSG. Now, maybe it is, or maybe it isn't, or maybe it's MSG and something else. But I got to say, it exists, and I don't know what it is that causes it.
Yeah, it could be a variety of things.
Yeah, like what? This is like I'm on a mission. I haven't had a moment, but it's like I got to research this because I want to know what causes it.
Or, talk to a doctor.
No, doctors don't know anything
about headaches.
About food. Most doctors don't know anything about that. Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of that and something else that wakes it up. I don't know. It's a mystery.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about MSG, though, is that essentially, if you've ever had, tomato sauce with mushrooms, you're ingesting MSG. Because there's MSG in tomatoes, there's MSG in mushrooms. It's just
there might be something different between the natural MSG and the man-made MSG. But we're not going to figure that out today. I just want to say I get that headache, and I don't know what causes it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fortunately, it hasn't happened very often, only 2 times recently, and it hasn't happened in decades. So there's that.
Yeah, headaches are the worst. My dad gets really bad headaches, too.
Yeah, well, I normally don't get headaches, which is, I'm grateful. I don't normally get headaches. Anyway, back to delicious food. Okay, so tell me, compared to the ritual and what do you typically do today? So you had dumplings.
Hmm.
What do
I'm
you?
sorry, what?
Yeah, compared to the traditional food that you made and what appears in your book, what do you do a lot today at home?
Oh, yeah. Today I don't eat traditional Japanese temple food. Yeah, I eat a lot of pasta. I love rice. I love soup.
Foods you were raised
Yeah.
with, maybe?
What's that?
Foods you were raised with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty adventurous eater and cooker. I have the New York Times cooking thing delivered to my inbox every day, and I love recipes there, and Thai food, and noodles probably are my favorite. And vegetables. I try to get local as much as possible and as much vegetables as possible. My husband is not super into vegetables, which is a pet
That's a
peeve.
challenge.
I'm lodged a complaint with management about.
That made me think of one thing. Your name is Geshen. Did you change your name at some point?
Legally? No.
Were you born with the name Geshen?
My birth name is Claire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what does Geshen mean to you?
Geshen's my Buddhist name.
Yes.
The name I
Does
was
it mean
given
something?
when I ordained.
Yeah. Did you choose it or it was given to you?
No, my teacher gave it to me. It means moon mind, the character for moon and the character for heart mind.
And it's very similar to your husband's name.
Oh, you mean the sound of it?
Yeah, there's a lot of the same letters.
Yeah, it's hard when you, like, English is different than Chinese, which is what these names are. In Chinese it's the character, pictograph, and so the meaning is within what the characters look like. And then it's pronounced in a variety of ways. So not like in English where the meaning is in what the words sound like.
Mm-hmm.
His name means like Sincerity Mountain or something like that. So it's actually a different meaning, but it sounds similar when you pronounce it.
Okay. I just thought it was curious that they looked so similar in English where everything
we call
loses its
ourselves,
meaning, right?
G and G.
Yeah, G&G. All right. Well, anything else you'd like to tell us about Just Enough Vegan Recipes and Stories from Japan's Buddhist temples?
Well, I hope people cook from it.
Yeah, I promise. I promise I will.
Yeah. No, so I've done a couple interviews, and the first few were people who had read it and really liked it, and they were like, I forgot it was a cookbook.
Oh, no.
And just recently I've been meeting some people who have cooked from it, and that's made me really happy. Oh, and some vegan Instagrammer people are gramming it, so that's cool. I don't know. I hope it makes people happy and is inspiring and gives people ideas of how to eat more plants.
Right. Well, it's going to be the step that I've been waiting a few decades to get to jump more into this traditional Japanese cooking, which I love to eat.
That soybean, maybe that'll be a good first.
Yes, and if you find anybody who knows how to make soy milk, send them my way.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have questions about how to do something, let me know.
All right, I will. Excellent. Geshen, Claire Greenwood, author of Just Enough Vegan Recipes, Stories from Japan's Buddhist Temples. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yes. I am so in the mood for Japanese food, and this book does it for you. And I encourage you to get it and read it. The stories are lovely. And the food looks pretty lovely, too. Do you have access to good Japanese restaurants wherever you are? I mean, there's the Japanese kind of American-style Benihana kind of places. But I mean the kinds that really take the care and make the traditional flavors that are so lovely and so yummy. I got to stop talking about it. You couldn't hear that, but my stomach is actually growling. Yes, it is. Okay, so we have a quarter of the program left, maybe a little less, and I want to talk about a bunch of things. So there was that mention of what's going on in the Amazon, and everybody's aware of it. It's all over social media, right? And my question is, what are we doing about it? What are you doing about it? Obviously, to me, the best thing that anyone could do today, in this moment, is to stop supporting animal agriculture. Animal agriculture is one of the main causes of global warming. And, I call it global warming. I know that we were supposed to call it climate change, and there was this kind of politically correct transition to calling it climate change because people were afraid to say global warming. I don't know. I'm calling it global warming because things are getting hot. And I'm not afraid to call it that. And we could solve it, or at least mitigate. Mitigate is an important word. Mitigate, slow down. Because at some point, there's a tipping point. Some scientists, some people say we've already reached the tipping point. I'm full of hope, and I say, no, not yet. Because when we reach the tipping point, it's like the domino effect, where the amount of heat that is trapped in our atmosphere affects too many things, and there's just too much in the environment that causes more problems. And I hope that we're not there yet. And thinking that we're not there yet, the one thing that all of us can do today is to stop eating animals, or at the very minimum, really reduce the amount of animal products we're eating. Because animal agriculture is one of those things that can be eliminated quickly. We are growing lots of plant foods to feed animals. And to do that, some people don't connect the dots with why is it that animals are causing so much global warming? Why are they emitting so much greenhouse gases? Well, some of it comes from their breathing, some of it comes from their pooping, and their excrement emits a lot of methane gas and nitrous oxide. And so that's a piece of it. But another piece of it is the plants that we grow to feed them. It's very inefficient. We could grow a lot less plants and feed more people if we were doing it directly. And the way that most of the crops are grown to feed animals, they're done in an industrial way. We call it conventional. I don't know who came up with that. There's nothing conventional about it. And it's not conventional when we think about how food has grown on this planet for hundreds, thousands, millions of years. The industrial, conventional way is done with petrochemical fertilizers and pesticides. So we have to dig deep into the earth and pull out the carbon that's been safely buried there. So we get the petrochemicals and we create the pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers. And the soil that's growing these feed crops for animals to eat is very depleted, because what do pesticides do? Pesticides kill. Pesticides kill bugs. Pesticides can kill the bacteria. All life in that soil is getting destroyed. So we have to add back some kind of stuff that the plants will eat, and that's the petrochemical fertilizer. It's really a bad cycle, and it can't go on forever. But what happens then is all of that carbon that's been pulled out of the earth goes up into the atmosphere in a variety of different ways. The animals eat the food, and then they poop it out, they breathe it out. And it's warming the earth. Now, a lot of things are warming the earth. We have cars, and we have factories, and We have all kinds of bad habits that aren't good for the planet, and those need to be fixed too. But those things that need to be fixed, like upgrading factories and changing our cars, changing our mode of transportation, changing the way we heat our homes, all of that requires sustainable, renewable energy sources. And there's lots of great technology going on to get there. But it takes time and it takes money. And we don't have the time right now. I remember talking to Robert Goodland, who unfortunately left us a few years ago. And Robert Goodland, I'm going to look him up on my website. But that was his premise in all of his articles and research. He wrote a very well-known article with Jeff Anhang in the World Watch Institute magazine that gets quoted a lot. And some people say that they didn't know what they were talking about and they made some assumptions that weren't really just. But the key premise was that by not consuming animals, by everyone feeding themselves with plant foods and not animal foods, we can mitigate, we can slow down the global warming, which will give us time to change our way of life in terms of changing from petrochemical sources for energy and using sustainable sources, solar and wind, and what other wonderful new inventions are out on the horizon. Because we need time to do that. We need money to do that. And by not eating animals, we buy time. That's why it's so important. Okay, it's important to me for lots of reasons because, number one, it's a no-brainer. I don't know why anybody wants to eat an animal. I haven't in 45 years or longer. And it just seems kind of insane to me. But, okay, not everybody's on the same page as I am. I get that. For many people, it's okay to kill, to slaughter, and eat flesh. And then we have all the chronic diseases. How many times have we talked on this program about heart disease and diabetes and cancer and autoimmune diseases and how eating animal products can aggravate the well-being of our body and increase the risk of all these chronic diseases. It's like a win-win-win. We eat more fruits and vegetables, we cool the planet a little bit, we're nice to the animals, and we get healthier. Doesn't it make sense? It does to me. So everyone's talking about the Amazon burning, and the question is, did the president of Brazil kind of instigate this and encourage people to set off fires? There's a lot of questions going on. How can we put the fires out? And we have a lot of things to find out, but there are things that we can do here, and we can't control a lot of other things, but what we can control is what's on our plate. So I hope you're inspired to make changes in your own life. And if you're vegan already, great. What can you do after that? There's so many things we can always do better. It's like I study yoga. I love yoga. And I love yoga because yoga is for everyone. There is no perfect pose. You can do yoga at any level, very basic beginner yoga. You can do chair yoga, or you can do very advanced yoga where you're twisting into crazy pretzels and balancing on your pinky. There's all kinds of things that you can do, and a pose in yoga can start from very simple to very, very difficult and challenging. And there's no perfect pose. All poses are good for you no matter where you are. And that's like an analogy that I look at, or metaphor for life. No matter where we are in life, no matter how we're approaching our lives, we can always do more. We can always do better. And I'm always looking to what I can do in my own life to make things better, especially for cleaning up the environment and not adding to global warming. Plastic is big on the horizon now, and it's really difficult in our lives to live without plastic, right? And that's like the next project on my agenda, is to minimize all of that, because I don't like to waste, not just food, but everything. And it's so convenient, it's so easy, and it's so disastrous for all of us on the planet. So things to think about, things to digest. And I just want to mention before we go, my blog, What Vegans Eat. Have you been there lately? I had a really fun day a couple of days ago that I talked about in the blog, and I hope you get to read it. It's What Vegans Eat Day 1656. I think that was the day... Was that the day I talked about where I wasn't feeling good. I was in a bad mood. And what happened afterwards, you might read about it in What Vegans Eat. Have I come to the end of the program? I have a minute. Okay, well, there's not much you can talk about in a minute. So I will just let you know that you can always find me where? At responsibleeatingandliving.com. That's where my blog, What Vegans Eat, is, in case you didn't know that. responsibleeatingandliving.com. And I haven't talked about our app in a long time, but we do have an app. You can find it on iTunes or Android, Google, what do you call it? I'm an iPhone person, so I don't know where you go to Google Play. Is that where the apps are? Anyway, it's free. I use it all the time for recipes. And you can find the Responsible Eating and Living app and download it and use it. Let me know if you use it, if you like it. Okay? And you can find me and email me at info@realmeals.org. So I hope you enjoy some Japanese food. Look at the book Just Enough, Vegan Recipes and Stories from Japan's Buddhist Temples. And have a delicious week.